I never thought I'd find myself here, typing this out anonymously, letting strangers see the worst day of my life. My name isn't important, but I'm 37, married, with 2 kids under 10. Until recently, I thought my life was normal. Comfortable, even. My wife, let's call her Lisa, and I had been together since college. We built a home, routines, Saturday morning pancakes, bedtime stories, everything you see in those happy family posts on Instagram. Life had its ups and downs, like any marriage. We argued about money, chores, the usual boring adult stuff. But nothing ever felt like it would break us. I trusted her completely. Maybe too much. Maybe that's my fault. I remember nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about work deadlines or the kids' school projects. Lisa would be in bed next to me, scrolling on her phone, sometimes laughing at something I couldn't see. I didn't care, not really. I thought happiness was just ordinary. Even the small things felt safe. I'd drop the kids at school, swing by the grocery store, come home to Lisa making coffee. We had plans for a summer vacation, new curtains for the living room, her father's 70th birthday coming up. I had no reason to doubt her, and yet, there were moments I wish I had noticed. Little oddities that now, in hindsight, scream betrayal. But back then, I told myself I was imagining things. That life was just life. I had no idea that the world I thought I knew was about to collapse entirely. Looking back, there were cracks I ignored. Little things that didn't make sense at the time. Phone calls she'd take in another room, sometimes with a laugh that didn't feel familiar. I remember one evening she came home later than usual. She said it was just a work thing. But her clothes smelled different, like someone else's cologne. I shrugged it off. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I just didn't want to believe it. I remember the first time I felt that gnawing suspicion. It was subtle, a text message that popped up on her phone while I poured coffee. I saw a name I didn't recognize, a casual joke that made my stomach twist. I didn't say anything. I wanted to trust her. I loved her too much to destroy what we had over a hunch. We had been so deeply intertwined for so long that the thought of betrayal felt absurd. I reminded myself of all the happy memories, all the times she had been there for me. Her father had even grown close to me, treating me like his own son. I thought that bond meant something. There were moments, though, that linger in my memory. Times I felt like I was on the outside of her life, glimpsing something I couldn't quite name. And I kept telling myself, it's nothing. Don't ruin your marriage over paranoia. That was my mistake. By the time I realized the truth, I had been blind for months. I had trusted someone who was hiding an entire life from me. And I had no idea just how deep the betrayal went. The turning point didn't happen with some dramatic confession or a confrontation. It was stupidly ordinary, the kind of thing that haunts you because it feels almost accidental. I was doing the laundry one Saturday when I found it, an email draft on her laptop, addressed to someone I didn't know, full of messages that were too personal for a friend. Heart racing, I read a line that made my stomach drop. I can't wait to see you tonight. I don't want him to find out. I closed the laptop, hands shaking. I sat on the couch for a long time, staring at nothing. My mind refused to accept it. She wouldn't. Couldn't. I kept repeating it, like a mantra. I thought maybe I had misunderstood, maybe it was an old message, a mistake. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it grew fast. I noticed little changes I'd previously ignored, her phone always face down, her sudden interest in girls' nights that never seemed to end, texts deleted before I could see them. I started waking up at night, watching her sleep, wondering if I was seeing a stranger. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was emotional infidelity, not physical. Maybe it wasn't serious. Maybe it would go away if I ignored it. But the feeling in my chest, the knot of fear, betrayal, and shame, was relentless. By the time I confronted her about being distant or secretive, she laughed it off, saying I was imagining things, that I was overworked. That made it worse, because deep down I wanted to trust her, but every instinct in me screamed that something was wrong. I didn't know it yet, but the life I thought I had, the family, the security, the love, was already cracking beneath my feet. The day I found out, I'll never forget. It wasn't some dramatic showdown in the living room. It was subtle, cruelly ordinary, like betrayal had been hiding in plain sight all along. I had taken the kids to school and returned home early, thinking maybe a quiet morning could help me think. Her car wasn't in the driveway. Her phone buzzed. I glanced at it. It was a message from the same unknown number I'd seen before. My chest tightened. I knew instinctively that I didn't want to see it, but my curiosity won. The messages weren't casual anymore. They were explicit, intimate plans, confessions, laughter that wasn't mine. I felt like my heart had been ripped out, then crushed underfoot. I couldn't breathe. I didn't even know if I could speak. When she came home, she was smiling, holding flowers for me, completely unaware of the storm raging inside me. I asked her, voice shaking, about the messages. She froze, eyes darting, lips quivering. And then it came, the admission, soft but deliberate. Yes. I've been seeing someone else. It's nothing to do with you. I swear. I laughed. Not the good kind. A bitter, hollow laugh. Nothing to do with me? You're cheating on me. You're lying to me every day, smiling at me, lying to our kids. How is that nothing? She cried. I cried. I didn't even know what I was feeling. Anger, grief, disbelief, shame, betrayal. All at once, consuming me. In that moment, the world I had trusted, the woman I loved, and the life I had built for us, it all shattered. And worse, I realized I couldn't stay here pretending I didn't see it. After she admitted it, I didn't know what to do. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make her feel the pain I felt, but I couldn't. Instead, I just sat there, frozen, feeling my stomach twist into knots. My mind kept going in circles. Why? How long? Who? Were the kids safe in all of this? I paced the house, grabbing random things without thinking. I looked at the photos on the wall, our wedding, vacations, birthdays, and everything felt like a lie. Every memory tainted. I couldn't decide whether to cry or vomit or just disappear. The kids came in, laughing about something silly, oblivious. My heart broke again. I realized that even in my pain, I had to protect them. But I couldn't stay here. Not with her. Not with the constant reminder of what had been stolen from me. I tried talking to her, asking questions, looking for explanations, but it only made the pain sharper. She offered excuses, claiming loneliness, stress, curiosity, things that didn't matter. None of it justified what she had done. Her tears were real, but my grief was louder, deeper, and more permanent. I packed a bag that night, mostly for me, but also for the kids. Clothes, toys, their favorite blankets. I wrote a note, not to beg, not to curse, just to tell her I was leaving and that I needed space. I didn't include all my anger. I didn't want to make it worse. But I did include something she had no idea about, something that would flip the whole story in ways she couldn't even imagine. I left with the kids, my hands shaking, my heart hollow, and my life turned upside down. I thought I was leaving only a marriage, but in reality, I was stepping into a secret that no one else knew yet. I left the house that night with a mix of adrenaline and numbness I've never felt before. The kids were asleep in the back seat, oblivious to the storm, and I kept telling myself I was doing the right thing. But part of me was terrified. Terrified of what I was walking into, terrified of what I had discovered, and terrified of how far this betrayal went. Before leaving, I wrote a letter. Not a letter of blame, not a confession, not even an apology. I wrote the truth, but a truth she would never expect. I didn't put it in her hands. I left it where she would find it eventually, a quiet bomb waiting to explode. The secret? Her father's will. He had passed a few months ago, something she knew about, and everyone assumed the estate would go to her. But her father had left me a portion, his final gesture of trust and appreciation for me. I was supposed to be the one entrusted with some of the family wealth, not her. I didn't tell her. I couldn't, not yet. She had betrayed me, and I wanted her to know, but I wanted it to hit her in a way that mirrored the shock I had felt. I left the letter with a mix of fear and satisfaction, knowing it would change everything once she read it. Driving away that night, I kept thinking about the kids, about the life we built, about the person I thought I knew. The pain was unbearable, but there was also a strange clarity. Betrayal is cruel, but secrets, especially inherited ones, carry power. And for once, I held some of it. I didn't know how she'd react. I didn't know what would happen next. But I knew one thing: nothing would ever be the same. It didn't take long for her to find the letter. I had left it on the kitchen counter, tucked under a magazine she always flipped through on Sunday mornings. I didn't witness it. I was staying at a friend's place with the kids, trying to breathe, trying to think straight. But I knew, the moment she opened it, the world I'd left behind would erupt. The call came that evening. I could hear the shock in her voice before she even said anything. You knew? About the will?" Her words were trembling, a mixture of anger, disbelief, and something like fear. I stayed quiet, letting her unravel. "What is this, really?" she demanded. "Why didn't you tell me? Why are you taking this like some victory?" Her voice cracked, but it was sharp, accusatory. I wanted to scream, to explain, to justify, but the truth was raw and messy. I couldn't. Not fully. She had betrayed me. I had held a secret she could never have imagined, and the roles were reversed in a way that left both of us exposed. Tears. Anger. Blaming. She lashed out, trying to make me feel guilty, like somehow the inheritance meant more to me than the family we built. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The betrayal had carved a canyon between us, and the letter was a mirror reflecting all the pain she had caused me. I could hear the kids in the background, asking why Mommy was crying. My chest tightened. All the power in that letter couldn't protect the children from the chaos. It was a bitter realization: even when you hold secrets that hurt the other person, some damage is irreversible. By the end of that call, I knew the fight was over in a way either of us could fix. Our marriage wasn't just broken, it was gone. After the call, I didn't sleep for nights. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the face I had loved, trusted, believed in, twisted with shock, anger, betrayal, and confusion. And I saw myself, holding the kids, staring at a ceiling I couldn't unsee the cracks in. I felt everything at once: grief for the life I thought I had, rage at the lies, guilt for the secrets I now held over her. I hated myself for 1,000 little things, moments I hadn't noticed, questions I hadn't asked, times I had turned a blind eye to things that now screamed betrayal. And yet I couldn't hate her fully, because part of me still loved her. Still wanted her to be the person I thought she was. The kids sensed it. They'd cling to me more than usual, whispering questions I couldn't answer without shattering their sense of security. And that broke me more than anything, knowing that my pain was leaking into theirs. I felt responsible for it all, even though I had been the victim. Anger burned hot, but it was tangled with fear and sadness. I feared I would never trust anyone again. I feared the damage done to my children. I feared the weight of resentment would crush any chance of forgiveness, both for her and, weirdly, for myself. I cried more than I'd ever admit to anyone. I cursed her. I cursed the universe. And I cursed myself for believing, for loving, for trusting so completely. By the end of that first week away, I realized this wasn't just a moment of heartbreak. It was a turning point that would define the rest of my life. I was no longer the same person who walked out that door. The consequences hit faster than I could process. The kids were the first, and worst, impact. My oldest started asking why Mommy wasn't living with us anymore. My youngest cried at bedtime, asking if I was going to leave too. I tried to explain in the gentlest way possible, without dragging them into adult betrayals, but I could see the confusion and hurt in their eyes. It's one thing to feel betrayal yourself, another to watch it echo in your children. Friends and family didn't know what to say either. Some sided with her, assuming separation meant I had done something wrong. Others didn't speak at all, awkwardly avoiding the topic. The support network I had counted on felt fragile and unreliable, leaving me to navigate a storm that never seemed to end. Even daily life became a minefield. Grocery shopping, school pickups, bedtime routines, they all felt heavier, like I was carrying the weight of two lives at once. Every place reminded me of her, the coffee cup she always used, the blanket she always folded, the empty spot on the couch where she laughed. I also realized that trust, once broken, changes you permanently. Simple things, like leaving the kids with a friend or replying to texts, became exercises in anxiety. I questioned motives, intentions, every small gesture. And I knew deep down that this wasn't temporary. The betrayal had rewired my ability to trust completely. My marriage, obviously, couldn't survive this. Conversations became legal discussions, emotionally dry, punctuated with anger or cold silence. The bond we had was gone, replaced by suspicion, hurt, and memories that now felt poisoned. I was learning, painfully, that betrayal doesn't just break a relationship, it breaks the world you thought you lived in. Eventually, I knew I had to confront her face to face. Phone calls and letters weren't enough. I needed closure, or maybe I just needed her to see the wreckage she caused. We met at the house one evening while the kids were at a friend's sleepover. The air was thick, silent, until she finally broke it. "I never meant for this to happen," she whispered, almost pleading. "I didn't want to hurt anyone." I laughed, not the humor kind, but a bitter, jagged laugh. "Didn't mean to hurt anyone? Do you know what you did to us? To me?" My hands shook as I spoke, and I had to fight to keep from collapsing right there. She tried to justify herself. She talked about loneliness, curiosity, mistakes, even love for the other person. She cried. I cried. And for a moment, part of me felt like I was listening to the woman I used to love. But then the reality crashed back in. The betrayal wasn't a mistake. It was months of deceit, secrecy, lies, and stolen trust. We argued for hours, voices raised, tears falling, old memories twisted into weapons. She tried to shift blame, I tried to maintain composure. But composure is fragile when your foundation has been ripped out. At one point, she screamed, "You're using the will to punish me!" And she was right. I didn't deny it. That inheritance was my silent leverage, a small piece of control in a situation where I felt powerless. It wasn't revenge, exactly, but it was the only thing left that wasn't hers to manipulate. By the time we left that confrontation, we were both exhausted, hollowed out, and painfully aware that some fractures could never heal. After that confrontation, I spent days alone with my thoughts, and they weren't kind. Part of me still loved her, the woman I had married, the mother of my children, the person I had trusted with my life. I kept replaying moments, trying to understand where I went wrong, what I missed, what I could have done differently. But nothing made sense. Love didn't protect me from deceit. Guilt settled in too. I felt guilty for leaving, for exposing the kids to this upheaval, for holding the secret about the will over her. Even though she had betrayed me, even though I hadn't done anything wrong, guilt whispered constantly, reminding me that my decisions had consequences. That letter, my silence, my absence, they all carried weight, and it crushed me. Resentment was a different beast. It simmered beneath everything I did, feeding on the images of her laughing with someone else, on the trust that had been stolen from me. I hated that I still thought about her, that memories of her smile, or the sound of her voice could make me ache as much as her betrayal did. And confusion. That might have been the worst. How do you reconcile loving someone who broke you? How do you move forward when everything you built, every promise you believed in, has been upended? I couldn't reconcile it. Some nights I stayed awake until the kids woke, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was what life was always going to feel like, empty, restless, and fractured. Even as I tried to breathe, to eat, to work, the emotional chaos lingered. There was no closure, no magic resolution. Just fragments of a life I no longer recognized, and the gnawing question of how someone I trusted so completely could hurt me so deeply. Weeks turned into months, and the consequences of her betrayal settled into the rhythm of my life like an unwelcome shadow. Sleep was irregular. I'd wake in the middle of the night, heart pounding, replaying conversations, messages, the letter, her face. Anxiety became my constant companion, sometimes spilling into panic when the kids argued or cried, or when I imagined her presence in places we used to share. Trust, I realized, had been irreparably broken. Friends, colleagues, even family, it became impossible to fully rely on anyone. Every gesture, every word, was filtered through the lens of, "What are they not telling me?" I had never been paranoid before. Now it was exhausting. My sense of security, the foundation I had built my life on, was gone. I also struggled with my sense of identity. Who was I now, divorced from the version of myself that existed in that marriage? A betrayed husband? A single father? Someone smarter than I thought, for seeing the truth? Or someone naive, for missing it for so long? I couldn't reconcile these conflicting versions of myself, and it left me restless, hollow, and sometimes bitter. The children were my anchor, but even that came with pain. I worried constantly about the emotional residue they were absorbing, about the way they perceived her absence, about the questions they hadn't yet asked. Their lives had been dragged into my trauma, and that knowledge weighed on me more than anything. Some days I felt like I was just surviving, going through the motions, pretending to be okay, while underneath the surface, resentment, grief, and fear churned endlessly. I realized that some betrayals don't just change relationships, they change who you are. The practical fallout hit hard, and fast. Lawyers, custody arrangements, financial disputes, all of it felt like another betrayal layer on top of the emotional one. Her anger at the will spilled into every conversation, every negotiation, and I realized that my secret, while justified in my mind, had made the process even more volatile. Custody of the kids became a minefield. I wanted stability for them, a sense of normalcy, but every decision, every school pickup, every bedtime routine was now a battlefield. They sensed tension, even when I tried to shield them. Their mother's presence in their lives was still crucial, but her actions made it complicated, filled with undercurrents of mistrust that I had to navigate delicately. Money was another mess. The inheritance was mine legally, but morally it felt messy. She screamed, accused, tried to manipulate friends and family against me. I had to protect not just my share, but also my peace of mind, which was already fragile. Even mundane routines became emotionally charged. Driving the kids to soccer practice, grocery shopping, visiting grandparents, every small task reminded me of the home we had lost, the life that had been ordinary before the betrayal. It's exhausting, trying to maintain appearances, pretending I wasn't crumbling on the inside. Through it all, I realized the consequences of her choices weren't just hers, they radiated outward. They affected me, the kids, extended family, friends, and even the way strangers looked at us when our separation became public. A single act of infidelity had multiplied into 1,000 tiny fractures that would take years to even partially heal. Resolution, I've learned, doesn't always come neatly. There was no cinematic reconciliation, no heartfelt apologies that fixed everything. Instead, there was distance, boundaries, and a slow, painful reorientation of my life. I moved the kids into a place that felt like home but wasn't the home I had built with her. I created routines that were predictable, safe, small victories in a landscape that felt fractured. I tried therapy. Not just for me, but for the kids too. The sessions were awkward at first, forcing words out that felt like knives, but slowly they became a lifeline. I began untangling grief from anger, guilt from clarity. I started understanding that it wasn't my fault, that someone else's choices didn't erase my value, my love, or my ability to rebuild. Even with that progress, some days the pain comes back, uninvited. I'll see something that reminds me of her, her laugh, a place we went, a phrase she used, and it's like opening a wound that never fully closed. And yet, there's resilience underneath it. I've learned that life doesn't stop for betrayal. You move forward, even when the pieces don't fit perfectly. The letter, the will, the confrontation, they were all part of a reckoning I didn't ask for but had to face. I survived it. The marriage ended. Trust has to be rebuilt, slowly, with new people, new experiences, and the children as the center of my universe. I don't forgive her, not fully, maybe not ever. But I've learned that I can forgive myself for staying, for loving, and even for leaving. That, at least, is my anchor in all of this. Looking back, I realize that betrayal doesn't just hurt, it changes the way you see the world. It leaves traces you can't erase. Even now, years later, I feel the echo of what happened. I notice the way I study people, the way I second-guess kindness or smiles, the way I clutch my children a little tighter than may be necessary. I still think about her sometimes, not with love, but with a mixture of sadness and disbelief. How could someone I trusted so completely hide an entire life from me? How could the person I built a family with choose someone else, someone outside our world, while pretending everything was fine? These questions have no easy answers, and maybe that's the hardest part. I've learned painfully that trust is fragile. That love doesn't protect you from deception. And that sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones you would have died for. I've also learned that strength doesn't come from avoiding pain, it comes from surviving it, facing it, and choosing to keep living despite it. The kids are my anchor. Watching them grow, laugh, and rebuild their own sense of security reminds me that life continues, even when your world collapses. I focus on that. I focus on the present, on doing right by them, and on slowly forgiving myself for everything I couldn't control. If there's a lesson here, it's messy and unpolished, betrayal cuts deep, and it never leaves cleanly. But survival, resilience, and protecting the ones you love, those are things no one can take away, no matter how devastating the truth. Even now, some nights I lie awake, thinking about what was lost. But I also think about what I can still protect, and that keeps me going.